Okay, it is about 10:35. We are going to go ahead and get started. So welcome to this webinar presented by myself, Krista Carriger, and my colleague, Echo Ma. We are consultants here at InAmerica Education. And so what we're going to do is we're going to talk a little bit about what is American private school education, and we're going to focus on the various grade levels as Nicholas suggested before. So for today, that will be our main focus, is going through the different types of schools, what they mean, what to look for, so that way you have a better sense of when is the right time to think about American private school for my child. And hopefully you find the information that we are presenting to be helpful. And feel free to put any questions in the chat. If you have them, we'll have a Q&A session at the end. Okay, so a little bit about introduction for this presentation. So our goal for this is to focus on the characteristics of private education at various grade levels. So we're going to focus on day school, junior boarding school, and boarding schools. Now, in the day school kind of bubble, you'll see that it also encompasses various types of schools. So there are schools that go all the way through high school. There are schools that stop at middle school. There are schools that stop at the 5th grade level, 6th grade level. So it really depends. So we'll jump into all of that. So the agenda for today will be an overview of private education in the United States. It will also be focusing on, as I mentioned, private day schools. So the different types of day schools that exist, junior boarding schools, some key takeaways. And like I said, we'll have a Q&A session. So feel free to, if you have any questions, put it in the chat. We'll open it up at the end. So that is just a little bit about what we will be covering today. So a little bit of an overview about U.S. private education. So it's defined as independent institutions which are funded by tuition, donations, and endowments. So very different than the public school system. They have fundraising events and other things, and obviously collect tuition money, but that doesn't cover the cost of private school education. So that's why they rely on donations and some endowments from families, alumni, things like that. For types of private schools, there are day schools, junior boarding, and then there are full boarding schools. Now, some of the boarding schools may still have day school students, but that doesn't necessarily mean that. I would say the majority of those type of schools are boarders. There are also various grade levels. So there are schools that are specifically just preschools where you have to leave to go to kindergarten. We'll talk extensively about that and how important it is for American school education. And there are other schools that are K through 8. Some of them go through 9th grade. Some of them are K through 5 schools. Again, it really depends on the type of school, the location. There are also full K through 12 schools. And in addition to that, there are junior boarding schools, which are typically 6th grade through 9th grade, where students can leave to apply for 10th grade, or they can leave to go to a boarding school to repeat 9th grade. So it kind of depends on what you're looking for. And then you have your boarding schools, which are mainly high schools that start at 9th grade through 12th grade. So some of the benefits of the private schools here in America is there are smaller class sizes. So public schools here might typically have 30 students. A private school will have about half that number, maybe less. There are some schools that have, a maximum number of students at 14 or 15, and sometimes there are 2 teachers, again, depending on the grade level. So there are also personalized learning opportunities and experiences. There's a lot of support from teachers because they have small class sizes, so they're able to give additional instruction and support to students. The other thing is that they have diverse extracurriculars. So everything kind of takes place on campus, whether it be at, day school, junior boarding, or boarding school. And there's a heavy focus on college preparation, of course, not at the preschool level, but when thinking about the high school level, that is a big focus for them. And they have, college counseling services. And even for junior boarding schools, they have like secondary school counselors. So for example, we had a student who went to one of the junior boarding schools, and we kind of partnered with the secondary school counselor on, what schools would be a good fit for this student, to really make sure that we were helping them succeed when they left that junior boarding school and went to high school, and ended up getting into one of their dream schools. So, it is a big kind of partnership with private school education, and we really appreciate that we can work together for the junior boarding schools or those K-8 schools, in getting them into a high school where we know that they will be successful. So that's something that's really important to us as well. Most of these schools are accredited by the National Association of Independent Schools, also known as NAIS. This is a regional accreditation, and it is something that we look for in terms of the schools for. There are some guidelines and other aspects that they need to follow. And so most of the private schools are a part of this association and have this accreditation. So let's talk a little bit about private preschools. This is something that's very near and dear to my heart. I am a former early childhood teacher and taught preschool for many, many years. And so I cannot express enough how important early development is at this point. So a lot of times, families might say, oh, but they're just playing. It doesn't really matter. It's not real school. They're not doing anything academic. But private preschools really, if you find a high quality private preschool, that really sets the foundation for academic learning. And for American schools here, when you apply to kindergarten, let's say, and you're leaving the pre-K program at one of these, top ranking private schools, because yes, they are top ranking. We consider them to be, some of these schools are considered to be the baby Ivies of the country that help you on the path to that successful high school and college outcome. So it's really important because, from ages 2 to 5, you're focusing on social, emotional development, cognitive development, their physical skills. And the way in which they do that is through play-based hands-on learning. You want to focus on creativity, problem solving. That really sets the foundation for academic learning, which could be letters, numbers, shapes, writing, reading. All of those things are based out of what happens in private preschools. The great thing when you look for private preschools is that not all preschools are the same. So for example, if there might be a private preschool, and let's say there is only 1 or 2 teachers, but a pretty large number in the class, that would not be considered a high quality private preschool, because that would fall more into the category of a daycare. They're still meeting the student to teacher ratio by the law that's required of them. However, at private preschools that are high quality education, they would have a much lower number. So you might see 2 to 3 teachers in the classroom, sometimes 4 teachers, depending on who's coming in and out of the classroom. And the whole goal is to give that individualized support and attention. You want to provide a safe and nurturing environment with age-appropriate activities. And what that looks like is, doing hands-on learning. So for example, what it looks like for a 2 to 5-year-old of how to work on writing skills is by using a paintbrush, is by using clay and Play-Doh to get their hands working to work on those muscles. So it's not sitting with a pen and paper and writing something down. What it looks like is doing those kind of activities, or painting on an easel and going up and down to build their hand and wrist motion. So very, very different. And you want to make sure that at these private preschools that's what's happening. That's how you can tell what a quality preschool looks like. And these can really set the foundation for the next steps. So when applying out of these schools for kindergarten, they're looking at a lot of different, the ongoing schools are looking for what kind of preschool they came from, what kind of skills have they developed. And they can do this through a number of ways. So there are different types of programs. There's Montessori, Reggio Emilia, more traditional. There are some that are more academic focused. These are all different types of teaching philosophies, and you can find the one that you think works best for your family. It's really just a matter of preference. There's also enrichment programs through art, music, and language exposure, and of course, outdoor play as well. So private day schools, again, like I said, some of these can be K through 8 or K through 9, K through 12. Some of them stop at 5th grade, so they could be K through 5. This means that students attend classes during the day and they return home at the end of the day. They may need to apply out for high school or even for middle school, depending on, again, what grade level. The focus is on strong academics with an emphasis on liberal arts, STEM, and again, individualized education, really supporting each child and meeting them where they are. And very, very strong emphasis on character education, leadership, and community service. That is ultimately what these private day schools have to offer, and that is how they differ from public schools. So they focus on public speaking, whereas private schools often do not, and they do it from a very early age. If you were to visit some of these private day schools in kindergarten, they have something where they can practice leadership and they can practice public speaking. So for example, when we went on a tour at an all-boys school in New York City, the students will come right up to you and tell you what they're working on for the day. And you're on a school tour and they know to do that and they're happy to do it. And they do it so often and it becomes ingrained in their day that they just become really great public speakers because they're so used to it from a very young age. The other thing is all of these schools will have extensive extracurricular activities, whether that be sports, arts, different clubs. Now, every school's variety differs. You just heard from Rye Country Day School. They have a beautiful campus and a plethora of sports, arts, and clubs to choose from. Everybody can kind of find their place at a school like Rye Country Day School. They have opportunities for theater and music and varsity type of sports for those competitive athletes. So that's something that really makes private day schools unique in a way that at a public school, you would need to do that after school outside, or they might have that at the high school level, but not necessarily at middle school level. The other thing is the day schools focus very, very heavily on being a tight-knit community with extensive family involvement. So what that means is attending performances, volunteering for different activities. That's why the parent interview is so important at these day schools. So you heard from Courtney and Ryan, who are saying that we really want everybody to be their authentic selves, from students to families. They're trying to find who's a good fit for their community. And you'll also find that at these schools, there are diverse teaching methods for experiential learning and advanced coursework. So what that means is, for example, at like Horace Mann, they have the DOOR program, which is an outdoor like nature laboratory where they do these overnight trips for experiential learning. They learn a lot of things there. So not just like science and exploration, but leadership and community and how to form strong connections with one another. So those are all the really important things at private day schools. And I'm going to turn it over to Echo, who's going to talk to you about junior boarding and boarding schools.
Thank you, Krista. So, hi everyone, my name is Echo, and same as Krista, I'm also a consultant here for the K-12 department at InAmerica Education. So for now on, I'll be taking you guys on to elaborate more on junior boarding as well as high school boarding schools. So for junior boarding school, this is the entry point. Somehow most international students are start thinking to come just because they offer boarding program for the international students. Typically, junior boarding school offer grades from grade 6 to grade 9. They're different case by case. Some offer from grade 6 to grade 8, some do not. But usually in the typical situation, they offer from grade 6 to 9. And you have the option to stay on until 9th grade, and you have the option to transfer out to high school and enter there as a freshman, as a 9th grader. The purpose of junior boarding school is really to build this bridge between the elementary and high school with a focus on independence and responsibility. It will be an emphasis on personal growth, time management, and study skills. Just as Krista said before, in elementary, pre-K, and middle school, there will be a lot of activity on hands-on and tell you how to learn from the practice. For the junior boarding school, slowly and maturely, school will let students to gain more personality growth, stuff like how do you study better, how do you manage your time better. As for the environment goes, junior boarding school implement a really structured and supporting environment with dorm parents, advisors, and peer tutors with the students. There will be strict policy on electronic stuff in the dorm as well as on campus. So literally, if you're a junior boarder at one of these junior boarding school, the teachers or the school will know where you are, what you will be doing every single minute of the day. And as for the academic and activity, there will be humongous options to choose from. There will be a lot of academics tailored to adolescent needs, but there will be also a range of extracurriculars to develop diverse skill sets. You will be taking class during the class hours, but after class periods, you will be doing sports, you will be participating in clubs, you will be doing your backstage for theater production. There will be a lot of options there. Can you go on the next slide? Thank you, Krista. So as we enter depart from junior boarding, here we are at the boarding school. Typically offers from grade 9 to 12. It is a full-time residential school for high schoolers only. So it will offer entirely different experiences from all the other school we talked about before, just because the unique situation of full boarding residential style. So the focus of boarding high school will be college preparatory curriculum with advanced courses. Most school offers advanced level of curriculum in either AP or IB. In recent years, we've noticed school changes starting developing their AT, advanced teaching curriculum, which are challenging courses developed by faculty members at their school. And there will be a holistic education with a balance of academic, athletic, arts, and leadership. As for your student life goals, you'll gain full exposure to this residential life. You'll be able to learn how to be independent, how to gain self-discipline, and how to embrace a global perspective. In most cases, boarding school has a higher percentage or set percentage of international students. You will be able to be friends with people from Africa, from Asia, from literally all of the world. So there will have a diverse community living experience, leadership roles with the dorms. And as for the support system goes, similar to junior boarding school, high school boarding schools will have this solid, very mature system of support system. You will be around with your guidance counselor, your college advisors, your wellness psychiatrist, as well as your personal advisor, who you will be able to talk to anything, literally anything about your academic, anything about your life, anything happened in your social circle, what happened in your life, your advisor will be able to know about. So here you go, next stage, next slide. So this is a typical question we got to ask a lot by parents and students. So when should we begin in the U.S. educational system? What is a good time for our student and family? So the answer is, it really depends case by case. So if you're thinking about starting young and early as preschoolers and elementary schools, it's really about building a well-rounded profile from an early stage. You will be living in the neighborhood, you will be building connections with not only the school, but as well as the community around you. So from an early stage, you will slowly, maturely learning more, not only about the U.S. education, but more about the U.S. culture. As for the middle school, it's really to facilitate a transition into high school. If your family is determined to come to United States for high school education, then middle school might be a good time to start thinking about early, since it will give the opportunity for you to try and learn things before the high school starts. For example, there are not many opportunities to play lacrosse in China. There might not a lot of facilities to do ice hockey in China. However, if you come to middle school in the United States, there are a lot of facilities and opportunities for which you can try on and during your middle school age. For high school, it's a period of time that you will be able to gain leadership roles, not only academically, but also sports, arts, and other activities. These experiences will really cultivate student as person to better prepare themselves for the college. Um, Last but not least, the full boarding school programs. The full boarding school program still stands unique on its own just because it offers students this full residential experiences. For boarding schools, not only majority of students will be live on campus, the majority of faculty members will be living on campus. Literally, students will be friends with their faculty members, not only as their teachers, but also as their friends, as well as their parents on the school. So next slide, please. So last but not least, this is another very typical question we got to ask a lot. So what it takes us, what needs from family and student to prepare for U.S. private school life. So first and foremost, we will say English proficiency. You will be living in a country that's English is a sole language to be spoken. So to have a decent English proficiency skill set will help the student and family to better adjust to their neighborhood as well as the campus. Proper school selection is one of the most critical part of the entire application cycle. Why we say that? Just because a well-balanced school list will not only put students to a school that best fit for them, but also in terms of long-term strategy, as we're thinking about applying to school, we're thinking about applying to different tiers of school that might be in our safety zone, but there are schools that might need a little bit reach. A well-balanced school will help students to have the most effective or most needed results in the end. Adaptation time. We put this factor there just because we think they're entering into a new space, entering into a new neighborhood, and then entering into a new educational system will give students adequate time to adjust to culture shock, will ensure them to excel academically as well as socially, and become stronger college applicants. Last but not least, we're here for students and family to provide professional guidance, not only to better prepare them to how to tailor their application material to better fit to the application, but also to provide them professional advice and suggestion in terms of how to choose schools, how to prepare your application materials, how to do essays, how to do interviews. All these different parts of application materials will be better. We're here for the professional standpoints to give our professional advice and suggestions. And I think that comes to the end of our session. We'll be opening up for any questions you have.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Echo, if you can pull up the chat, see if there's any questions or if any
Yes,
hands
I
are
will.
raised. It's hard to tell when I'm sharing the screen, but just to reiterate that it's really not a standardized process for K-12 in the same way that it is a little bit more standardized for college. So it can be really challenging to know when is the right time for my child to come here. As Echo said, it really depends on when you want. There's different things to consider about your child and their character, their personality already. And that's why, we're here to help. So any questions that you have, please feel free to reach out now or through the chat or email us later. We'll provide all that information. So are there any questions, Echo?
Okay, so the first question is, for families considering long-term commitment to U.S. schools, should they come early, like pre-K early?
So again, that kind of depends on your personal preference, and it also depends on the school that you're looking for, right? There are certain schools and I'll use this for an example. So Trinity, in New York City is a very popular school, one of the top schools in the country. I taught there, and we know as InAmerica that their main entry points are kindergarten and ninth grade. So let's say that you have your heart set on Trinity. I would say yes, definitely come here for kindergarten, come here for preschool. But if you're really looking for something that's more like middle school, entry into high school, as Echo said before, there's more opportunity to do even just extracurriculars here versus in China. There are more facilities available for different types of sports. You also want to make sure that they align in some way. So again, it kind of depends. So we like to say that if you're just applying for boarding school for high school, and you have extensive extracurriculars that you're involved in already where you are, then that is totally fine. But it does make it a little bit more competitive for you. So sometimes it is better to come here on the earlier side. But again, it's really dependent on case to case. We would need to know a little bit more about your child and family to get a better sense. But again, it depends on the schools and what you're looking for.
Yeah, we also have a second question like, what should parents do or focus on to ensure the child excels in US high schools?
For US high schools, and Echo, feel free to chime in
Yeah.
if I miss anything. But for US high schools, I would say that the biggest thing that they're looking for, depending on whether you're looking for day or boarding school, is that character education, leadership opportunities, being actively involved in a number of different things, but not just doing it for the sake of doing it, but really doing it to discover their passion for it, right? No one wants to meet with a student who says like, oh, I've been playing piano since I'm 7 years old. And then you're like, oh, great. How do you like it? And they're like, yeah, it's okay. Right? You want to make sure that it's something that they really enjoy doing. So I would say when they're younger, put them in those activities whenever you can to let them explore and discover that. The main thing for high school that I would say is again that leadership, that public speaking ability is something that's so important. Being able to articulate their thoughts can really go a long way in an interview and to express themselves. And maybe they haven't had the opportunity to explore a lot of extracurriculars, right? We have students who come to us from Chinese public schools and they don't have a wealth of extracurriculars or the time to really become actively involved, and that's okay. We just want to make sure that they can articulate the things that they want to do. And of course, I will say that the test for schools is important, but it is not the only important aspect of the application. So you want to prove that academically they'd be able to keep up with the rigor of the curriculum and the school, but you also want to make sure that they're not pouring and devoting all of their time into just focusing on the test, because you want them to be able to have the flexibility and the freedom to say, okay, well, this is what I'm involved in, this is what I like doing.
Yeah. And I also like to add on is that just because like in the high school stage, the students they are slowly become from teenagers to adolescents. So at that point, they should have their autonomy about what they're passionate about, what they're dislike. So I would say to leave a little bit of freedom, leave a little bit room for growth to the students themselves, just to for them to better excel in their own space, own pace. And one last question, and then we can end up the session. So there's a situation, there's a parent said, my child is still very young, just 2 years old. I have a preliminary idea that I hope she will study in the United States in the future, but how can I determine the right time for her to start? For families, such in such an early stage, what aspect should we focus on make the decision?
So that's a really great question.
Yes.
And I just want to say one other thing that Echo and I were alluding to is that independence is super, super important for the high school level, especially for boarding
Yes.
school. So I just wanted to emphasize that one last thing. But
Yes, that's
for
what I was trying to. Yeah.
both of us just lost that word independence. So for young children, and it's good that to be thinking about that, even though your child is 2 years old, because families here have to think about it as soon as their baby is born. If they want to go to preschool, right, they have to apply to a twos program. They have to already kind of have that in mind. It's really dependent on, again, the schools that you're looking into, and what, if you're looking to make a long-term commitment, I would say that coming here at an elementary level and letting them adjust, as Echo kind of said before, or even the middle school level, as Echo kind of said before about the culture shock, right? You coming here, if that is like your goal, your ultimate goal for what you have, you want to make sure that they have the time to adjust. They find a neighborhood where they're living, the community aspect of things. You want it to feel very comfortable. Sometimes throwing them in the midst of middle school when there's lots of changes happening can be a little bit more of a shock. And so again, it really depends on the type of schools that you're looking for. So whether that is you're hoping for like junior boarding school later on down the line, I would say the junior boarding school is definitely a great option, which leads into boarding school if that was the goal. If you're looking for day schools, there are certain requirements like I-20s. You have to consider if this school will offer an I-20, or if you need to apply for a green card. So, those are all kind of factors to consider as well.
Yes. I think we are 1 minute past our allotted time. For any question, feel free to follow our WeChat account, and you can connect with our assistant WeChat and they will direct to us. Thank
Mhm.
you so much for all your participation. Have a wonderful day and wonderful evening.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you all so much.